Max was a sheltered dog no one would approach. His body covered in wounds and eyes filled with fear told the story of his violent past. When his new family brought him home, something unexpected happened. Max began digging in the same corner of the yard every day. When they discovered what was underneath, the entire town was in shock. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun cast gentle shadows across the Johnson family's suburban home. Birds chirped happily in the maple trees lining their driveway, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted through open windows. For the Johnsons, Emma, David, and their 10-year-old son, Tyler, it seemed like the perfect start to another ordinary day. But their lives were about to change in ways they could never have imagined. Emma stood by the kitchen window, her fingers wrapped around a warm mug, watching her husband load their SUV with gardening supplies. They had big plans for their backyard, a vegetable garden, maybe a fire pit, the kind of project that brings families together. David caught her eye and waved, smiling in that way that still made her heart skip after 15 years of marriage. "Mom," Tyler called from the doorway, his sneakers already tied, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Can we go now?" "You promised." Emma glanced at the clock and nodded. "Grab your jacket, it might get cool later." Today wasn't just about gardening supplies. Today, after months of discussion, countless hours of research, and Tyler's relentless campaigning, they were finally going to visit the local animal shelter. They were ready to adopt a dog. Emma remembered how it all started, nearly 6 months ago, when Tyler had come home from school unusually quiet. When she'd finally coaxed him into telling her what was wrong, tears had welled up in his eyes. "Jake's dog died," he'd whispered, referring to his best friend. "He was really old and sick. Jake said he'd had him since before he was born. He said it was like losing a brother." Emma had held Tyler as he cried, not just for his friend's loss, but for the companionship he'd witnessed, something he'd never experienced himself. That night, after Tyler had gone to bed, she and David had the first of many conversations about pet ownership. "He's responsible enough," David had argued. "He keeps his room clean, does his chores without complaining, gets good grades." "It's a huge commitment," Emma had countered, though she was already warming to the idea. 10 to 15 years, possibly longer. "We've been talking about it for years," David reminded her. "Maybe it's time." So began Operation Dog, as they jokingly called it. Tyler had thrown himself into research, checking out library books on dog breeds and care, watching training videos online, even volunteering at a local veterinarian's office on Saturday mornings to learn about animal health. Now, as they drove to the shelter, all that preparation was about to pay off. Tyler could barely contain his excitement, rattling off facts about different breeds and asking for the 100th time if they could get a bigger dog, not a little yappy one. The shelter was located on the outskirts of town, a simple brick building with a chain-link fence surrounding the exercise yard. As they pulled into the gravel parking lot, Tyler could barely contain his excitement, bouncing in the back seat and listing all the tricks he planned to teach their new pet. Inside, the sound of barking echoed off concrete walls. The smell of disinfectant hung in the air, masking other, less pleasant odors. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a name tag reading "Margaret" greeted them at the desk. "First-time adopters?" she asked, smiling at Tyler's obvious enthusiasm. "Yes," Emma replied. "We've been thinking about it for a while. Our son is finally old enough to help with the responsibility." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Well, you've come to the right place. We have plenty of wonderful dogs looking for forever homes. Any particular breed in mind?" "Something medium to large," David said. "We have a good-sized yard with a fence. And friendly," Tyler added quickly. I want to play fetch and stuff. Margaret's smile faltered slightly. Most of our dogs are very friendly, but I should warn you, many of them have been through difficult situations. Some were strays, others surrendered by owners who couldn't care for them anymore. And unfortunately, we do get cases of abuse and neglect. Emma felt Tyler press closer to her side. She put a reassuring arm around his shoulders. We understand. We're prepared for a dog that might need extra care or training. That's wonderful to hear, Margaret brightened again. So many people want the perfect pet right out of the gate. They don't realize that sometimes the dogs with the hardest pasts can become the most loving companions if given a chance. She led them through a door and into the kennel area. Dogs of all sizes and colors barked and wagged as they passed. Some pressed against the chain barriers, eager for attention. Others lounged on beds or played with toys. Tyler stopped at almost every kennel, asking questions and offering his hand for sniffing. He seemed drawn to the larger breeds, a mixed breed with a spotted coat who rolled over immediately for belly rubs, a lanky hound who howled melodiously when Tyler spoke to him, and an energetic retriever who brought toy after toy to the front of her kennel. Emma watched him, pride swelling in her chest at his gentle approach with each animal. David took notes on his phone, jotting down the names of dogs that seemed to be good candidates. By the time they reached the end of the first row, they had already identified several possibilities. There's one more section, Margaret said, leading them around a corner. These are our longer-term residents, some with special needs or behavioral issues that make them harder to place. We don't often bring first-time adopters back here, but something tells me you folks might be different. The atmosphere in this section was noticeably quieter. The dogs here seemed more subdued, some watching warily as they passed, others barely acknowledging their presence at all. Tyler's excitement dimmed a little, replaced by a solemn curiosity that made him seem older than his 10 years. They were almost to the end of the row when Margaret paused, her expression changing subtly. "This is Max," she said, gesturing to the last kennel. "He's a German Shepherd, about 3 years old." Unlike the other dogs, Max wasn't at the front of his kennel. He sat in the far corner, his amber eyes watchful, wary. Even from a distance, Emma could see the scars that marked his tan and black coat, some old and faded, others more recent. "What happened to him?" David asked quietly. Margaret sighed. "He was found tied to a tree in the woods about 20 miles from here. Severely malnourished, signs of physical abuse. The hikers who found him thought he was dead at first. When they approached, he was too weak to even growl. He's been with us for almost 4 months now." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She glanced at Tyler, worried the story might be too disturbing for him, but her son's face showed only deep concentration as he studied the shepherd. "Why hasn't anyone adopted him?" Emma asked, though she could guess the answer. "He's not the easiest case," Margaret admitted. "He's very fearful of men especially. We think his previous owner was abusive. He's not aggressive, just extremely cautious. Most families want a dog that's more immediately friendly." Margaret hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "Between us, the shelter director was considering classifying him as unadoptable soon. We've tried everything, our best trainers, behavior modification, even medication for his anxiety. Nothing's worked." Tyler had gone quiet, staring at the shepherd with an intensity that surprised his parents. "Can I talk to him?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. Margaret hesitated. "You can try, but don't be disappointed if he doesn't respond. He doesn't usually interact with visitors." Tyler knelt about 6 feet from the kennel door. Instead of extending his hand or calling to the dog, he simply sat there, waiting. After a moment, he began to speak, his voice just above a whisper. "Hi, Max. I'm Tyler. You look like you've had some really bad stuff happen to you. That's not fair. Dogs are supposed to be man's best friend, but I guess some people forgot that they're supposed to be your best friend too. Emma felt her throat tighten as she watched her son. David placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. Neither spoke, not wanting to break the moment. I promise if you came to live with us, nobody would ever hurt you again, Tyler continued. You could have your own bed, and I'd play with you, but only when you want to. It's okay if you need time to learn to trust us. Then, something extraordinary happened. Max, who according to Margaret rarely approached the front of his kennel for anyone, slowly stood. His movements were stiff, cautious, but his eyes never left Tyler's face. Step by step, he made his way forward until he was just on the other side of the chain barrier. Tyler remained perfectly still, not reaching out, not trying to touch. Max lowered his head slightly and sniffed the air between them. Then, almost imperceptibly, the tip of his tail moved, not quite a wag, but something close to it. He likes you, Margaret whispered, disbelief evident in her voice. I haven't seen him approach anyone like that before. Emma looked at David, and in his eyes, she saw the same certainty she felt growing in her own heart. This damaged, fearful dog had somehow connected with their son. Despite all the practical reasons to choose an easier pet, a friendly lab or a sociable retriever, they both knew they couldn't walk away from Max. I want to meet more of the dogs, Tyler said suddenly, standing up. Just to be sure. Emma nodded, impressed by her son's maturity. They spent another hour at the shelter, revisiting the friendlier dogs they'd met earlier, asking more detailed questions about care requirements and temperaments. But Tyler kept returning to Max's kennel, speaking softly to the shepherd who, remarkably, seemed to be waiting for the boy to come back each time. As they were preparing to leave, Tyler pulled his parents aside. I know Max is scared and has problems, he said solemnly. But I think that's why he needs us more than the other dogs. The happy ones will get adopted anyway, right? Margaret, who had overheard, smiled sadly. Your son is right. The friendly, outgoing dogs rarely stay with us long. It's the ones like Max who often get left behind. The adoption process wasn't simple. There were forms to fill out, a home inspection to schedule, and serious discussions about Max's special needs. Margaret was refreshingly honest about the challenges they might face. He'll need time, patience, and possibly professional training, she explained. There might be setbacks. Are you prepared for that? We are, David assured her, though Emma could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. He chose Tyler, Emma added simply. We can't ignore that. The home inspection was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, they were encouraged to visit Max regularly to begin building a relationship. Every day after school, Tyler would sit beside Max's kennel, sometimes reading aloud from his favorite books, other times just talking about his day. By the third visit, Max would come to the front of the kennel as soon as they arrived, sitting as close to Tyler as the barrier would allow. It's like they have some secret language, David observed as they watched the boy and dog interact. Kids sometimes sense things we don't, Emma replied. And maybe Max knows Tyler doesn't see him as broken. A week later, after their home had been approved and they'd purchased all the necessary supplies, a comfortable bed, appropriate food, toys that Margaret had suggested might appeal to a shy dog, they returned to the shelter to bring Max home. The shelter staff had gathered to see them off, an unusual occurrence that spoke to how invested they'd all become in Max's journey. This is a big day for our boy, Margaret said, tears in her eyes as she handed David the leash. You folks are giving him something many of us thought he'd never have, a second chance. The dog was even more nervous outside his familiar kennel, cowering slightly as David approached with the leash. It was Tyler who eventually managed to clip it onto Max's collar, speaking to him in that same gentle, reassuring tone the entire time. It's okay, Max, he whispered. We're going home now. Our home. The drive was tense. Max lay in the back of the SUV, as far from them as possible, his body rigid with fear. Every time David hit the brakes or made a turn, the dog would flinch as if expecting punishment. Tyler, sitting in the seat nearest to Max, kept up a steady stream of quiet conversation, telling the dog about his new home, the yard where he could run, the soft bed they'd bought for him. When they finally arrived, they decided to take things slow. Rather than forcing Max into the house immediately, they let him explore the backyard first, keeping him on a long lead for safety. The shepherd moved cautiously, sniffing the perimeter, his ears constantly swiveling to catch every sound. He started when a neighbor's door slammed, and again when a car drove past. "It's like he's expecting something bad to happen any minute," Emma observed sadly. "It probably always did before," David replied. The realization was heartbreaking. This dog had likely never known kindness or security. Every experience in his life had taught him that humans were a source of pain, not love. Changing that perception would take time and unwavering patience. Tyler seemed to understand this instinctively. He sat on the grass, not approaching Max directly but simply creating a calm presence nearby. Eventually, the shepherd's exploration brought him closer to the boy, close enough that Tyler could gently toss a treat in his direction. Max sniffed it cautiously before eating, then looked up expectantly. It was the first sign of normal dog behavior they'd seen from him. "Good boy," Tyler said softly, tossing another treat a little closer to himself. That night, they set up Max's bed in a quiet corner of the living room. They'd decided against crating him, fearing it might trigger bad memories of confinement. Instead, they created a safe space with blankets and toys, easily accessible but somewhat sheltered. To everyone's surprise, Max chose instead to lie in the hallway between Tyler's room and the stairs, a position from which he could watch both the boy and the home's entrance. "He's guarding him," David realized, a mixture of emotion in his voice. After everything humans did to him, he's still trying to protect Tyler. Emma nodded, tears stinging her eyes. "He's chosen his person." The first few days were a careful dance of establishing trust. Max wouldn't eat if anyone watched him. He flinched at sudden movements and cowered if David raised his voice, even when he was just calling from the yard to ask if Emma wanted lemonade. Thunderstorms sent him scrambling for the darkest, smallest space he could find, usually under Tyler's bed. But there were small victories too. By the third day, Max would take treats directly from Tyler's hand. By the end of the first week, he allowed Emma to stroke his head, though he still tensed when David approached. And every night, without fail, he positioned himself as Tyler's sentinel, watching over the boy as he slept. Emma began keeping a journal of Max's progress, noting every milestone, however small. "Made eye contact with David today," she wrote on day 5. "Didn't hide during the garbage truck pickup," on day 7. "Played with the tennis ball for almost 5 minutes," on day 9. They established routines, which seemed to help Max feel more secure. Meals at the same time each day, walks following the same route, a consistent bedtime ritual where Tyler would read aloud while Max settled on his bed. Slowly, the shepherd began to relax, his body language becoming less defensive, his eyes less haunted. Then, on the 10th day after his adoption, something odd happened. Emma was washing dishes when she noticed Max standing at the back door, staring intently into the yard. When she let him out, expecting him to do his business quickly as usual, he instead trotted directly to the far corner of the property, a somewhat overgrown area behind the shed where the Johnsons hadn't yet extended their landscaping efforts. To Emma's surprise, Max began to dig. His powerful paws moved methodically, dirt flying behind him as he worked with single-minded focus. After a few minutes, Emma called him back, thinking it was just random dog behavior. Max returned reluctantly, looking back at the spot several times before coming inside. Dogs dig sometimes, David said when she mentioned it that evening. It's instinctual. Maybe there's a gopher or something back there. Emma nodded, but something about Max's intensity had struck her as unusual. This wasn't playful digging, it was purposeful, almost desperate. The next day, he did the same thing. And the next. Always the same spot, always the same determined digging. By the fourth day of this behavior, David decided to investigate. Maybe there's something buried there, he suggested. An animal, or maybe the previous owners had a pet they buried. The Millers didn't have pets, Emma replied, referring to the family who had owned the house before them. Remember Mrs. Miller told us she was allergic? That's why we had to deep clean the carpets before we moved in, just in case. David shrugged. Well, something's got his attention. I'll check it out this weekend when I have time to really look. But that Friday, the mystery deepened. Emma was working from home, typing reports at the kitchen table while keeping an eye on Max in the yard. The shepherd had once again gone straight to his digging spot, but this time, after about 20 minutes of steady work, he stopped abruptly. Emma watched as he stuck his nose deep into the hole, then backed away, making a strange whining sound she'd never heard before. Curiosity overcame her. Setting aside her laptop, she stepped out into the yard and approached Max's excavation site. The dog was pacing now, circling the hole, occasionally pawing at the edge but no longer digging. "What did you find, boy?" Emma asked, kneeling beside the hole. The depression was about 2 feet wide and nearly as deep. Emma peered inside, expecting to see old bones or perhaps a buried toy from previous residents. Instead, what caught her eye made her breath catch. Something metallic was glinting in the sunlight. Emma reached down, brushing away loose soil to reveal what appeared to be the corner of a metal box. She dug with her hands, enlarging the hole slightly, and confirmed her suspicion. It was a box, a safe, actually, about the size of a large shoebox, partially buried in the dirt. Her mind raced. Who would bury a safe in their backyard? And why had Max been so determined to uncover it? "David needs to see this," she murmured, pulling out her phone to text her husband. Max whined again, pawing at the edge of the hole as if trying to tell her something. "It's okay, boy," she assured him, though her voice trembled slightly. "You did good. You found something." As she waited for David to respond, Emma sat on the grass beside Max, her mind spinning with possibilities. Was it just an old safe the previous owners had forgotten? A time capsule, perhaps? Or something more sinister? Max pressed against her side, a rare moment of initiated contact. His body was tense, his eyes fixed on the hole as if it contained something dangerous. Emma stroked his fur absently, trying to calm both him and herself. "What secrets are you helping us uncover, Max?" she whispered. David arrived home early, intrigued by Emma's cryptic message. Tyler was still at school, which Emma was grateful for. She wasn't sure what they were dealing with, and her maternal instinct wanted to protect her son from anything potentially disturbing. "It's definitely a safe," David confirmed, now kneeling beside the hole Max had dug. "And it hasn't been here long. There's hardly any rust, and this soil is pretty damp most of the year." "Should we call the police?" Emma asked. David considered this. "Let's see what's inside first. It could just be someone's old documents or valuables they forgot about." Using a shovel, David carefully excavated around the box until they could lift it free. It was heavier than it looked, and he grunted with effort as he carried it to their patio table. Max followed, staying unusually close to them, his eyes never leaving the safe. "It's not locked," David noted with surprise, examining the simple latch mechanism. "That's strange." Emma felt a tingle of unease. "Be careful." David nodded and slowly opened the lid. Both of them leaned forward, uncertain what to expect. Inside the safe lay several plastic bags. David gingerly lifted one out and peered through the transparent material. His face went pale. "Oh my God," he whispered. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "Is that what I think it is?" The bag contained stacks of cash, $100 bills bundled together with rubber bands. David quickly examined the other bags. Some held more cash, others contained what appeared to be passports, driver's licenses, and credit cards, all with different names. "We need to call the police," Emma said firmly. "Now." David nodded, already reaching for his phone. "There must be thousands of dollars here. Maybe tens of thousands." As they waited for the police to arrive, a chilling thought occurred to Emma. She looked at Max, who sat alertly beside them, still watching the safe as if it might spring to life. "David," she said slowly, "how did Max know this was here? We've only owned this house for 8 months. The safe can't have been here much longer than that based on its condition." David's expression darkened as the implication sank in. "You think whoever buried this might be the same person who abandoned Max in the woods," Emma finished. "Maybe he saw them hide it. Maybe that's why he was abandoned, because he witnessed something he shouldn't have." Max whined softly, as if confirming their suspicion. David reached out cautiously to stroke the shepherd's head, and for the first time, Max leaned into his touch instead of shying away. "If you're right," David said grimly, "then whoever buried this might come back for it. And for Max." The thought sent a chill down Emma's spine. She moved closer to the dog, suddenly protective. "No one's going to hurt him again. Not ever." 2 police cars arrived 15 minutes later, their lights flashing but sirens silent in the quiet suburban neighborhood. Officers Chapman and Rodriguez introduced themselves and examined the safe and its contents with professional interest. "You were right to call us," Officer Chapman said, snapping photos of the items with a department-issued camera. "This isn't someone's forgotten savings account. These look like proceeds from something illegal, possibly identity theft based on the documents." Officer Rodriguez was equally concerned. "How did you say you found this again?" Emma explained about Max's persistent digging, pointing to the shepherd who now watched the proceedings from a cautious distance. "The dog found it?" Rodriguez asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," David confirmed. "He's been trying to dig in that spot for days." Chapman and Rodriguez exchanged glances. "Mind if I ask where you got the dog?" Chapman asked. Emma told them about adopting Max from the shelter, including the details of his condition when he was found abandoned. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "This might be relevant to another case. We've been investigating a series of sophisticated identity theft and credit card fraud operations in the county. The perpetrators have been exceptionally careful. Until now, we've had very little physical evidence." "You think our dog is connected to criminals?" David asked incredulously. "It's possible," Chapman replied. "The timing lines up. The most recent fraud cases started about 5 months ago, which would be just before your dog was found abandoned." "We'll need to take your statements formally," Rodriguez added. "And we may need to bring in someone from the K-9 unit to work with your dog, see if he can help us establish a stronger connection." As the officers continued their preliminary investigation, taking photos and carefully bagging the evidence, Tyler's school bus pulled up in front of the house. Emma moved quickly to intercept him, not wanting her son to be frightened by the police presence. "Mom, why are the police here?" Tyler asked as soon as he spotted the patrol cars. His eyes widened with concern. "Is it about Max? They're not taking him away, are they?" "No, sweetheart," Emma assured him. "Actually, Max did something amazing. He found something important buried in our yard, and the police are here to check it out." Tyler's worry transformed instantly to pride. Really? Max is a hero? Emma smiled, ruffling her son's hair. It seems that way. Inside, Officer Chapman was explaining that they would need to process the area further. We'll have to dig a bit more, make sure there's nothing else buried there, he said. And we'd like to bring in our K-9 unit tomorrow, if that's alright. See if your dog reacts to any specific scents associated with these types of crimes. Of course, David agreed. Anything we can do to help. Chapman lowered his voice. I should warn you, if this is connected to the fraud ring we're investigating, these aren't the kind of people you want to cross. They've been known to resort to violence when threatened. Emma felt her stomach clench. Do you think we're in danger? Probably not, Chapman replied, though his expression wasn't entirely convincing. They'd have no way of knowing you found the safe unless they've been watching the property. But just to be safe, we'll have a patrol car drive by regularly for the next few days. That night, after Tyler had gone to bed, Emma and David sat at the kitchen table, speaking in hushed tones. Should we tell him? Emma asked. About the possibility that whoever buried that safe might be dangerous. David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from 20 years of knowing him. It meant he was deeply worried but trying not to show it. I don't want to frighten him, he said finally. But maybe we should prepare him, just in case. Tell him if he notices anything unusual, strange cars, people he doesn't recognize, he should tell us immediately. Emma nodded, glancing toward the hallway where Max lay in his usual position, guarding Tyler's door. The shepherd's ears perked toward them, listening to their conversation. What about Max? She asked. If he really did witness these people burying the safe, and if they abandoned him because of it. Then he's the key witness in their case, David finished. And they might want to make sure he can't lead anyone else to their stash. The thought was chilling. Emma felt a surge of protectiveness toward the dog who, just 10 days ago, had been a stranger to them. Now, it was impossible to imagine their family without him. We'll protect him, she said firmly. Whatever it takes. Over the next few days, the Johnson family's quiet life was anything but. Detectives visited their home, evidence technicians combed the yard for additional clues, and Max became the subject of intense interest from the police department's K-9 unit. The contents of the safe, nearly $40,000 in cash and dozens of fraudulent identification documents, provided investigators with their biggest break yet in the fraud case. Tyler, of course, was thrilled by his dog's newfound fame. I knew he was special, he declared proudly as a police K-9 handler worked with Max to see if he could identify specific scents associated with the crime. To everyone's surprise, Max proved remarkably responsive to the training exercises. Despite his traumatic past, or perhaps because of it, he demonstrated an unusual ability to recognize and alert to certain chemical traces found on the documents in the safe. He's got natural talent, Officer Ramirez, the K-9 handler, told Emma. With proper training, he could actually work with law enforcement. We have programs for civilian dogs with special abilities. Emma watched as Max followed Ramirez's commands, sniffing containers and alerting when he detected the target scent. The transformation was remarkable. The fearful, cowering dog they'd brought home from the shelter was still visible in certain moments, he still startled at loud noises, still approached strangers with caution, but there was a newfound confidence in his posture, a sense of purpose that seemed to drive away his anxiety. It's like he's found his calling, she murmured to David, who nodded in agreement. Maybe this is what he needed all along, David suggested. Not just a family to love him, but a purpose. A way to use his instincts for something good. 1 week after the discovery, Detective Sarah Collins sat at the Johnsons' kitchen table, updating them on the investigation's progress. We've identified at least 3 suspects based on the evidence from the safe, she explained. One of them owned a property about half a mile from where Max was found abandoned. We believe he may have been their unwitting witness. So they just left him to die? Emma asked, anger rising in her voice. Collins nodded grimly. Unfortunately, yes. But here's where it gets interesting. We found dog hair matching Max's profile in one of the suspect's vehicles. That's physical evidence tying them not only to the fraud but potentially to animal abuse as well. Will that be enough to convict them? David asked. Combined with the financial records we've uncovered and the evidence from the safe. Yes, I believe so. Collins smiled, a rare break in her professional demeanor. Your dog didn't just find stolen money. He may have helped us bring down an entire criminal network. That evening, after Tyler had gone to bed, Emma and David sat on their patio, watching Max patrol the yard with newfound confidence. The fearful, cowering dog who had first entered their lives was transforming day by day. He still had moments of anxiety, still flinched occasionally at sudden movements, but there was a steadiness to him now, a sense of purpose. It's like he knew all along, Emma mused, sipping her tea. Like he was trying to tell us something from the moment we brought him home. David nodded. I keep thinking about what Tyler said to him that first day at the shelter. About being man's best friend, but how some people forget they're supposed to be the dog's best friend too. Tyler's wiser than his years, Emma agreed. Do you think we should let Max train with the police? David asked, voicing the question they'd been dancing around for days. Officer Ramirez seems to think he has real potential. Emma watched as Max completed his circuit of the yard and trotted back to them, sitting at attention nearby, his ears perked forward attentively. For the first time, she could truly appreciate his beauty, the intelligence in his amber eyes, the dignity in his posture, the strength that had carried him through unimaginable hardship. I think we should let Max decide, she said finally. He's earned that right. As if understanding, Max stood and moved closer, resting his head gently on Emma's knee, a gesture of trust he had never shown before. Emma stroked his fur, tears pricking at her eyes. Whatever he chooses, David said softly, he'll always have a home with us. The decision, in the end, came more naturally than any of them expected. Max began accompanying Officer Ramirez 2 days a week for specialized training, learning to hone his natural abilities to detect the chemical markers used in fraudulent documents. The rest of the time, he was simply the Johnsons' beloved pet, growing more confident and affectionate with each passing day. Tyler took immense pride in his dog's dual roles. He's like a superhero with a secret identity, he told his friends at school. Regular dog by day, police helper by night. The analogy wasn't far off. Max seemed to understand the difference between his work days and his home days, shifting seamlessly between the two. 1 month after the discovery of the safe, Detective Collins returned with news that thrilled the entire family. We've apprehended all 3 primary suspects, she announced. They've been charged with multiple felonies, identity theft, credit card fraud, money laundering, and animal cruelty. They admitted to abandoning Max. Emma asked. Collins nodded. One of them confessed. Apparently, Max was originally their guard dog, but he was too soft for their taste. When they caught him watching them bury the safe, they were afraid he might lead someone to it. So they drove him out to the woods, beat him to make him afraid to return, and left him tied to a tree. Emma felt bile rise in her throat at the casual cruelty. David's hands clenched into fists. But their plan backfired, Collins continued with a grim smile. Because Max did exactly what they feared, he led someone right to their stash. And now they're facing years in prison, partly thanks to him. That night, the Johnsons held a small celebration in Max's honor. Tyler had made a special badge out of cardboard and aluminum foil, which he ceremoniously pinned to Max's collar. The shepherd endured the proceedings with dignified patience, though his wagging tail betrayed his pleasure at being the center of attention. "To Max," David said, raising his glass of lemonade. "The bravest member of this family." "To Max," Emma and Tyler echoed, and Max barked once, as if acknowledging the toast. Later, as Emma tucked Tyler into bed, her son asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mom, do you think Max remembers the bad people who hurt him?" Emma sat on the edge of the bed, considering her answer carefully. "I think he does, honey. Animals don't forget things like that." "But he's not scared all the time anymore," Tyler pointed out. "He's happy now." "That's because he's learned that not all people are like the ones who hurt him," Emma explained. "He's learned to trust again, thanks to you." Tyler smiled sleepily. "I'm glad we chose him. Even if he was the scariest dog at the shelter." "Me too, sweetheart." Emma kissed his forehead. "Sometimes the things that scare us most at first turn out to be the greatest blessings." As she left the room, she found Max waiting in the hallway, his ears perked forward attentively. He followed her downstairs, a shadow at her heels, and settled beside her on the couch as she picked up her book. "You know," she said, scratching behind his ears, "we thought we were rescuing you. But I'm starting to think maybe it was the other way around." Max leaned his weight against her side, a solid, warm presence. His eyes, once so full of fear, now held a calm steadiness that spoke of healing and trust. The scars on his body would never fully disappear, but they no longer defined him. What defined him now was courage, loyalty, and love, both the love he received and the love he gave so generously in return. 3 months later, the local newspaper ran a front-page story that caught the attention of the entire community. "Hero Dog Helps Police Crack Major Fraud Ring." The accompanying photograph showed Max, no longer fearful but standing proud in a specialized K-9 training vest, alongside the Johnson family and several smiling police officers. The article detailed how Max, after specialized weekend training with the police department, had assisted in locating additional evidence that helped prosecutors build an airtight case against the fraud ring. The 3 primary suspects were now facing multiple felony charges, including identity theft, fraud, money laundering, and animal cruelty. Thanks to Max's evidence, there would be no plea bargains, no reduced sentences, just justice. At home, Max had found his perfect balance. 5 days a week, he was simply the Johnsons' beloved family pet, playing fetch with Tyler in the yard, accompanying Emma on morning jogs, and even curling up beside David during weekend football games. But on Saturdays, he trained with the police K-9 unit, his natural abilities honed and directed toward helping others. The scars on his body were still visible, permanent reminders of his past. But they no longer defined him. What defined him now was courage, loyalty, and the family who had seen past his fear to the hero within. Tyler, especially, couldn't have been prouder. "See, Dad," he said one evening as they watched Max dozing peacefully by the fireplace. "I told you he just needed someone to believe in him." David smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "You were right, buddy. Sometimes the ones who've been hurt the most have the most to give, they just need someone patient enough to wait for them to share it." Emma, listening from the kitchen doorway, felt her heart swell with love for her family, all of them, including the 4-legged member who had brought such unexpected joy and purpose into their lives. The safe Max had uncovered wasn't just filled with stolen money and fraudulent documents. It had contained something far more valuable, the key to his own healing, and the beginning of a journey none of them could have anticipated. That night, as the family slept peacefully, Max took up his usual position in the hallway outside Tyler's room. But unlike those first fearful nights in his new home, he no longer lay tense and vigilant, expecting danger from every shadow. Instead, he rested with the quiet confidence of a dog who knew, at last, that he was exactly where he belonged, not just protected, but a protector, not just saved, but a savior. The backyard that had once hidden such darkness now flourished with new life, a vegetable garden, flowers, and a special corner where a plaque had been installed by the grateful police department, commemorating the spot where a remarkable dog had unearthed not just a criminal's secret, but his own extraordinary destiny. And every so often, when the family gathered in the yard for barbecues or games, Max would pause by that spot, sniff the air, and wag his tail, as if to say thank you to the twist of fate that had finally brought him home. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more incredible tales of remarkable animals who change lives in ways we never expect. Drop a comment below telling us about a special animal who made a difference in your life. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes come with 4 paws and a wagging tail.